Hello and welcome back to Thecrimereel. Our story today is about the botched kidnapping of Adolph Coors III, who went by the name of Ad. Ad was the grandson of Adolph Coors Sr., who founded a company in Colorado in 1873. Over the years, the company thrived and is most commonly known as the Coors Brewing Company. Adolph Sr. was married to Louisa Weber and they had 8 children. 2 of their children died in infancy, with the remaining 6 surviving to adulthood. The 5th born and 3rd surviving child was Adolph Coors Jr., who was born in 1884. He would follow in his father's footsteps and become the 2nd president of the Coors Brewing Company. Adolph Jr. and his wife, Alice May Kistler, had 4 children, the first of which was Adolph Coors III, or Ad, who was born in 1915. In 1923, Adolph Sr. handed the business to Adolph Jr. Despite the restrictions on brewing due to prohibition, the business had been cleverly diversified and as such was still thriving. It is said that Adolph Sr. was a deeply unpleasant and miserable person who was very cold towards everyone, including his family. It would seem that despite their wealth, they were an extremely unhappy family. When Ad was just 14 years old, his grandfather, Adolph Sr., had been visiting Virginia Beach along with his wife of 60 years, Louisa. During this visit, 82-year-old Adolph Sr. took his own life by leaping from the 6th floor of the Cavalier Hotel. 5 years later, in 1934, Ad's father, Adolph Jr., was subject to a kidnapping plot. 4 men conspired to kidnap him for a ransom of $50,000. The plan was that the person delivering the money would proceed to 3 different checkpoints to ensure that they were not being followed and then split the cash. Adolph Jr. would then be released in Colorado Springs. However, when Denver police were working on an unrelated auto theft case, they learned of this plot, and when one of the would-be kidnappers was arrested on a separate charge, the kidnapping was foiled before it had even begun. Despite his grandfather's suicide and father's attempted kidnapping, Ad thrived at school. He attended the Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire and then graduated from Cornell University like his father before him. He was also athletically gifted, becoming a semi-professional baseball player. However, he followed both his father and grandfather into the family business and became CEO and chairman of the board of the Coors Brewing Company. Ad seemed to be well liked by those who knew him. He was a friendly, popular man who, despite being the heir to a multi-million-dollar company, preferred to live a relatively simple life on a ranch with his wife Mary and their 4 young children. Tuesday, 9th of February 1960 started like any other morning for Ad. He left home at approximately 8 a.m, heading towards the brewery for a 9 a.m. conference meeting. A short while into his journey, he saw a yellow Mercury sedan broken down at the side of the road. Ad stopped to help this driver in trouble and soon disappeared without a trace. Shortly afterwards, not long after the time Ad had left for work, a passing veterinarian noticed Ad's truck on the bridge over Turkey Creek, but thought very little of it. 3 hours later, at approximately 11 a.m, a milkman travelling along the bridge sounded his horn several times to get the attention of the driver of a truck blocking the bridge. When there was no response, he went to investigate, finding the vehicle empty but with the engine still running and the radio was still playing. The milkman decided to move the vehicle himself, noticing that there was a reddish-brown stain on the seat. He then reported the vehicle to Sheriff Art Wormuth's office at Golden, Colorado, who quickly determined that it belonged to Ad. Upon inspection, traces of blood were found not only on the front seat of the truck, but also on the road nearby and part of the bridge railing. A baseball cap and glasses belonging to Ad were found by the edge of the water under the bridge. They also appeared to have blood on them. The next day, the FBI were called in to help Colorado authorities with the case. Following the disappearance of their son, Adolph Coors Jr. and his wife flew back from their Hawaiian vacation stating that money is secondary. The main thing is to get our son back alive. The Coors family were convinced that Ad had been kidnapped and fully agreed to pay the ransom if asked to do so. Sometime later, on Wednesday the 10th of February, Ad's wife Mary received a ransom note. The note was typed and read as follows: Mrs. Coors, your husband has been kidnapped. His car is by Turkey Creek. Call the police or FBI, he dies. Cooperate, he lives. Ransom, $200,000 in 10s and $300,000 in 20s. There will be no negotiating. Bills used / non-consecutive / unrecorded / unmarked. Warning, we will know if you call the police or record the serial numbers. Directions, place money and this letter and envelope in one suitcase or bag. Have 2 men with a car ready to make the delivery. When all set, advertise a tractor for sale in Denver Post Section 69. Sign, Ad King Ranch, Fort Lupton. Wait at NA 9-4455 for instructions after Ad appears. Deliver immediately after receiving call. Any delay will be regarded as a stall to set up a stakeout. Understand this, Adolph's life is in your hands. We have no desire to commit murder. All we want is that money. If you follow the instructions, he will be released unharmed within 48 hours after the money is received. With the help of law enforcement, Mary followed the instructions as outlined by the kidnapper. She placed the advertisement and waited for the instructions, but none came. Both local law enforcement and the FBI continued to pursue leads and analyse evidence, but there continued to be no trace of Ad. It was found that the ransom note had been typed on paper which had an uncommon watermark using a distinct typeface. Useful information, but still not bringing the authorities closer to a conclusion. As a result of extensive interviewing, the search became focused on a bright yellow Mercury that had been seen in the local area on a number of recent occasions. Authorities learnt that the owner of the vehicle was a man called Walter Osborne. Upon investigation, the FBI learnt that Osborne had also disappeared at the same time as Ad. However, before his disappearance, it became known that Osborne had obtained a gun, handcuffs, and a typewriter. The FBI also found that Walter Osborne was actually an alias for Joseph Corbett Jr. Corbett was a 31-year-old convicted murderer who had escaped from a minimum security prison 4 years earlier. He immediately became the prime suspect in Ad's kidnapping. The FBI obtained a warrant for his arrest and he was placed on the 10 most wanted fugitives list soon after. Shortly after his disappearance, the torched remains of Corbett's yellow Mercury were found by law enforcement in a dump in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The trail for Corbett remained cold throughout the summer, but tragically the trail to Adolph Coors ended in September 1960. On September 11th, some hikers came across a discarded pair of trousers in the Rocky Mountains near Sedalia, south of Denver. The trousers had a keyring showing the initials AC the Third. A detailed search of the area then followed, and on September 15th, other items of clothing, along with skeletal remains, were also found. A jacket and shirt that had belonged to Ad had bullet holes that showed he had been shot in the back. Further analysis of a shoulder bone confirmed this. From all the evidence collected, it appeared that Corbett had the kidnapping carefully planned. He had intended to kidnap Ad, take him to a remote location, camp for a few days until he got the money, and then disappear. What Corbett hadn't anticipated was Ad putting up a fight. It appears that there was a struggle on the bridge, and when Ad made a run for his vehicle, Corbett panicked and shot him twice in the back. Due to the high-profile nature of the victim, the case remained in the public eye and featured in many publications. Corbett's wanted poster sparked interest and leads across America, but ultimately it was magazine readers in Canada who provided an end to this case. Initially, a man advised the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and FBI about a man who had recently rented an apartment who bore a striking resemblance to Corbett. Upon further investigation, the man had already moved on. The next day, the manager at a rooming house in Winnipeg advised local police that a man who looked like Corbett had recently stayed at her house and advised that he was driving a red Pontiac. This information was well publicised across Canada, and October 29, 1960, a police officer reported a similar vehicle outside of the Maxine Hotel in Vancouver. Soon the local police and FBI headed to the hotel room. When they knocked at the door, Corbett simply answered, "I give up. I'm the man you want." Corbett was returned to Colorado, where he was tried for the murder of Adolph Coors III. With a mountain of evidence against him, including the ransom note and from the burned out Mercury, Corbett was convicted of first-degree murder on the 29th of March 1961 and sentenced to life in prison. In 1980, at the age of 51, he was released on parole for good behaviour. He served just 19 years of his sentence for the brutal murder of Adolph Coors III. After release, Corbett lived a reclusive lifestyle, firstly working in a manufacturing plant and later driving a truck for the Salvation Army. He continued to protest his innocence and lived his remaining years less than 10 miles from the scene of the murder. The final life that Joseph Corbett took was his own. Following his diagnosis with cancer, he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head on 24th of August 2009 at the age of 80. He left no note and no one claimed his body. I hope you found that story interesting. Good work indeed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the FBI. Thank you to you for listening to my channel. Please comment down below with any comments on the story or ideas for other stories. Thank you once again for listening to The Crime Reel. Goodbye.